Nick, so one of the things or happenings that's certainly changing the quote television business is it's becoming more and more really about the video business and the distribution across many touch points beyond a traditional MVP relationship. What do you guys see at Turner, and how is that impacting what you guys are focused on and what you're building?
Yeah, I mean, there's sort of two tranches. You have CNN, who, as an always-on news source, is really been very aggressive in sort of leveraging distribution to all the endpoints available, from MVPD to apps to smart TVs and to some of these emerging platforms like social platforms, messaging platforms. And so that distribution is happening because the consumer wants it, right? It's an important brand. Certainly this election demonstrated that. But the benefit from a brand perspective is our television audience is an older demographic. As we go to the desktop, the audience gets younger again. As we go to mobile, the audience gets even younger. And when you look at Snapchat, Facebook Live, Kick, and some of the messaging platforms, we now are building this really young audience up as well in environments that are native to them. And so they see CNN as a brand that they can relate to, which is obviously critical as a legacy brand that's been around 35 years, is introducing that brand to an audience in an organic way to sort of future-proof our business. Yeah. So that's been really interesting. On the sort of TBS TNT side, obviously we're in a premium video environment there, and eyeballs are going to many places. So our distribution through MVPD, set-top box, and sort of the development of apps becomes really critical, because while premium video is obviously scarce, relatively speaking, as consumers migrate to these new distribution outlets, we want to be able to sort of re-aggregate those audiences. And so both TBS and TNT are very focused on making sure that they're being thoughtful in the distribution of their content, and also very mindful of how to bring sort of best-in-class audience solutions to the marketplace.
Yeah. So these points bring certainly new business model challenges, opportunities, new products that are required. How do you think about that, economic opportunity or that customer interaction point differently in these new models?
I kind of look at it on a continuum. So we have sort of mature off-channel distribution points that scale very nicely, that represent sort of immediate short-term opportunity. And some of them are new and nascent and beginning to build up. So when we launch on a Kick or a Messenger, for example, the primary objective is, let's introduce our content to consumers in these new platforms and figure out how to program for them. And that's actually one of the really critical elements. Is this is not about sort of simulcasting our content everywhere. It's about programming for these distinct distribution channels. So I think we think about, how do we introduce content to consumers in new places that are appropriate for them? How do we program them in a way that's native to that environment? How do we start really testing and experimenting in these new channels, and hedging our bets, putting it in a lot of places so that as we get to critical mass, we can begin the notion of introducing it to advertisers. And we can do that in small areas as well if we have partners that want to experiment in there.
You mentioned earlier on a panel the John Martin's goal of getting to 50% audience guaranteed by 2020, I think you said.
Yep.
I assume a lot of that, or let me maybe ask you this way, is a lot of that driven by the fact that distribution points will be as diverse as they are? Is that a key? Are those things interconnected?
I wasn't at the company at that point, but I believe what's happening is that there is a broad acknowledgement, that consumer consumption of media is changing, and that in order to be successful at that and sort of crossing the chasm into sort of the next phase of this business, is you've got to acknowledge that the behaviors are changing. As I mentioned on the panel earlier, that's sort of about addressability and media currency, but it's also about what our networks are doing to program with lessons that they've learned from a digital environment. So Angie Tribeca launched its first season on a one-day binge-a-thon that was commercial-free, so you can think about acknowledging that consumers do like to binge great new shows. And then our networks are also experimenting with actually launching originals with limited commercial interruption. And again, this notion of, how do we get the consumer in and out of advertising, keep them engaged, give them experiences that feel familiar to them, and also bring that new model into the market. So the team was very successful on the TV side and bring that into the market in the upfront this past year.